Hey everybody, John Skiba here from the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel. And in this video, this is video number 7 of my 7-part series on our deep dive of the Chapter 7 bankruptcy process. If you haven't watched the other prior 6, go back and watch those. If you're considering Chapter 7 bankruptcy, I go through all of the process, what you can expect. And in this video, we're going to kind of do a big wrap up of what types of debts do not go away in Chapter 7 bankruptcy, how you can deal with them after the bankruptcy process is over, and then I'm going to go over some of the most commonly asked questions I get here in my law practice in the state of Arizona, and we're going to debunk some of the bankruptcy myths that are out there that may be holding you back from getting the debt relief that you need. But hey, if this is your first time here to my YouTube channel, please go ahead, click subscribe, check on that bell. That way you'll be notified each and every day when I put out new videos that'll help you deal with serious debt issues. All right, so this is like I said, the 7th video in my 7-part series. We're going to kind of do a big wrap up here. But something I wanted to talk about are debts that don't go away in Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and some things that maybe you can do to deal with them once the Chapter 7 bankruptcy is over. Now, the debts that don't go away really fall into 3 categories: taxes, domestic support obligations like child support, spousal maintenance, alimony, those kind of things, and then student loan debt. And I can talk about each of these individually and kind of maybe sometimes they do go away, but most of the time when you're looking at Chapter 7, these are the types of debts that are non-dischargeable. These are the types of debts that don't go away. Let's start with the first one, taxes. You know, my professor in law school who taught me bankruptcy, he always said that this is the golden rule. He who has all the gold makes all the rules. The government made the rules here, and surprise, surprise, they made it so that their debts are non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. So most income taxes do not go away in the bankruptcy process. However, there are some exceptions to that rule. If the tax is at least 3 years old, and we're talking about income taxes here, if you filed a tax return the year that they were due, and if the tax has not been reassessed to you in the last 240 days, then there's a good possibility that that income tax could be discharged in your Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So to go over that again, the tax has to be at least 3 years old from the time it was due. You had to have filed a return from that specific year, and the tax cannot been reassessed in the last 240 days. You may be asking yourself, what's this reassess thing? The reassess is if the tax had been, you know, if it's more than 3 years old, but you just recently filed the return and the tax was just recently assessed to you in the last 2 or 3 months, then it would be non-dischargeable. Or maybe if there's been like some type of audit and then they reassess the tax at that point. So those are the things you need to talk to a bankruptcy attorney about. But if you have these old taxes that have been sitting out there forever, you may be able to eliminate them through the Chapter 7 bankruptcy process. Even though most of the time people think, oh, you know, there's no way I'm going to get rid of those taxes, you might be able to do it in this situation. The next category is what we call DSOs, domestic support obligations. These are things like child support, alimony, spousal support, things that are awarded to your spouse or to your ex-spouse or to your children through a court order that you're required to pay. These don't go away. So the child support, spousal support, even if your children are grown, even if you've been divorced for 30 years or whatever, if there's a court order saying you got to pay it, you got to pay it. So domestic support obligations are typically, even if there's hardship, they're not going to go away. So you're going to have to deal with those after the fact. And I should go back to the taxes. So if you do have taxes that are non-dischargeable, the best way to deal with them is either through contacting the IRS and setting up some type of payment plan, or if the taxes are substantial, you can look at an offer and compromise as a way to try to resolve those. Either way, you're probably going to need a professional to help you with that. And so you may want to talk to a CPA or a tax attorney that deals with that on a consistent basis, and they can be able to help you with that. Now, when it comes to domestic support obligations, like I said, they survive the bankruptcy, and you may have to deal with your divorce attorney, or you may deal directly with the state authority that's actually collecting it. Like in Arizona, we have the clearinghouse that accepts things like child support payments. You may have to work directly with them to get something back on track to get yourself current on those. All right, now let's talk about the third area. This is an area that's in the news quite a bit lately. This is student loan debt. Now, the bankruptcy code says that any debt that you take out for an educational purpose, there's a presumption that it's non-dischargeable, meaning it survives your bankruptcy. And notice that the statute says any loan taken out for an educational purpose. So these are not only government loans, but these are private loans as well, which is crazy to me because Private student loans are nothing more than giant credit cards that have a lot of protections that are offered through the bankruptcy code. So if you take out a private loan or a federal loan, there's a presumption that that debt doesn't go away. So what can you do there? There is a way to overcome that presumption through a showing of hardship. Now, traditionally, I can tell you that it has been very difficult. As a law student at UNLV, I was an intern at the bankruptcy court there, and I saw several trials where I was shocked at how difficult it was to overcome that hurdle to get these loans discharged. I saw people that were dealing with some serious and substantial health issues and hardship, and the courts often just reduced the amount of student loans, didn't eliminate them completely. However, times have changed. It's important to note the law has not changed, but times have changed and attitudes towards student loans have changed quite a bit. I'm recording this in March of 2024. I'm telling you this because depending on who is in the White House often impacts the attitudes as far as how these student loans are dealt with in bankruptcy. Currently in March of 2024, if you have substantial student loans and you're able to show really any type of hardship, you can at least petition the court to have these discharged. And these, I'm talking specifically federal student loans. If you have federal student loans, right now, the federal government is not contesting them as vigorously as they have in the past, and we're seeing more and more student loans be discharged. If you're filing bankruptcy, if you're in Arizona, again, I do Chapter 7s, Chapter 13s. I can walk you through this and I can even take on your case. My information is below. If you're in another state, I have information below of someone who does what I do that we can refer you to. This is something to talk to your attorney about because you need an attorney to do this process. It's called an adversarial process that you have to go through to be able to get these discharged. Now, depending on what happens in the election in November, if the administration changes or if it stays the same, it could change the approach that the Department of Justice and the Department of Education takes as far as discharging federal student loans. Private student loans, you can still do this, but it's treated much differently, and you're still going to have to show a significant amount of hardship usually to get those eliminated. So those are the main three types of taxes that we're seeing, or types of debts that are non-dischargeable: taxes, domestic support obligations, and student loans. If your student loans are not discharged in your bankruptcy case, it is something where there are a lot of different programs where you can try to get rid of the student loans through things like income-based repayment plans or even settlement when it comes to private loans. So those are some of the things to think about as your Chapter 7 is wrapping up. All right, to wrap up this 7-part series on a Chapter 7, what I wanted to do is go over some of the most commonly asked questions I get here in my law practice in the state of Arizona. Now, probably without a doubt, the number one thing that people ask me is essentially, will I ever recover from this? Will my credit score ever go up so that I can get into a home, that I'll be able to buy a car? What's it going to do? And I've touched on this briefly in some of the other videos, but I can tell you this. Regardless of where your credit score is now, before you get ready to file your bankruptcy case, it's a situation where you're probably going to see, right when we file, about 100 to 150 point drop in your credit score. Now, your credit score, surprisingly to most people, will start improving within about 4 to 6 months. You'll actually start to see some movement. And that's because once your bankruptcy case is over, when you pull a copy of your credit report, you're going to see that all of the individual creditors, they're still there, but the amounts owed are zero. And then there's a notation saying it was discharged in bankruptcy. Now, there is a public records section of your credit report, and it's going to show that you filed. So if you file here in Arizona, it will say Bankruptcy District of Arizona. And it will show so that will stay there for 10 years. But the credit score will actually keep going up. When you're behind on your credit cards, when you're behind on a mortgage or car loan, those creditors are reporting every 30 days. You're 30 days, 60 day, 90 day late. Bankruptcy is one point in time. And the further you get away from that filing date, the better off you're going to be. Now, it gets better than that even. A lot of people, they're going through bankruptcy, they're trying to get rid of this debt, and everybody has this goal, we want to get into a home. We want to get a mortgage and be able to buy a home. Home loans are available starting at right around the 2-year mark after your Chapter 7 has been discharged. So like FHA, VA, they require that you be at least 2 years from your discharge date before you're going to qualify for a mortgage loan with normal interest rates. Some lenders are 3 years and some may even be 4. But it's right around the 2-year mark where most people and most of the clients that I've dealt with over the last 20 years plus, that's when you're really eligible to get into a mortgage loan and be able to start getting things at normal interest rates. Now, surprising to most of my clients, car loans and credit cards are available almost immediately. I always say for good or for bad, they're available almost immediately. Usually within weeks after the bankruptcy case is filed with the court, you start receiving in the mail applications for credit cards, advertisements for car loans. And the reason why they're sending you those is a couple reasons. One is they assume that you're getting rid of a lot of debt so that you're going to have more disposable income. Second reason is kind of a more perverse thing to me, but you cannot file bankruptcy again and get a discharge in a Chapter 7 case for 8 years. So in my view, they kind of think, well, we've got them. If you get a new loan, if you get a new credit card and you default on that, you don't have bankruptcy as a good option to help you for at least 8 years. So you got to be extremely careful when getting new loans as you're coming out of the bankruptcy process, because it's something where you're not going to have bankruptcy relief like you do now. So you got to be very careful of that. What the second most often question I get asked in my bankruptcy practice here in Arizona is, can I keep just one card out of the bankruptcy process? And I get it, because a lot of people travel for work. Despite what Dave Ramsey says, it's very difficult to rent a car without a credit card, hotels without a credit card. And so they're like, hey, I just want to keep this one, or hey, I've had this card forever. There's a zero balance on it. Can I keep it open? The answer to that is pretty much across the board. No, you cannot. You've got to, one, the bankruptcy code requires that you disclose all debts. So any account that you have a balance on, we've got to disclose it. Two, even if you have a card with a zero balance, or you have a card where you're current on the payments, the bankruptcy court, once you file the bankruptcy, they notify all these through the credit reporting agencies. Your creditor is going to find out about it, and they're going to terminate the card. If you look at the terms and conditions of your card, there's all these different, what they call acts of default. And one of those is filing for bankruptcy. And so you're not going to be able to keep out one card. I can tell you, at the beginning of my career, we would see that where maybe a credit card company would reaffirm a debt. It doesn't happen anymore. You need to plan on each and every credit card that you have right now will be discharged, or you will be discharged, but they'll be terminated. They'll be cut off, and you're not going to be able to use those accounts anymore. Like I said, surprisingly, you're going to be able to qualify for something more quickly than you might be thinking. And if you need something for work, it may be possible to get a secured credit card where you put down $500 or $600 and then get an account so that you can use that while you're on the road. Let's talk about the third question that I get very frequently, and that is, hey, am I going to be able to get into a lease if I need to? I need to renew my lease on the place where I live. What are they going to tell me about that? Am I going to be homeless? Am I going to be on the street? The answer is no. I can tell you that it is something, it's a concern. I mean, when you enter into a new lease agreement, many landlords nowadays will pull credit to see your credit worthiness, and they can bring that into as far as the determination whether to lease to you or not. I can tell you that a lot of the concerns that landlords have are really unfounded and really are based in them not really fully understanding the bankruptcy process. So what they're afraid is they're going to give you a lease, you sign the lease, you're in bankruptcy, and that you're going to get out of that lease. Now, first of all, if you've already filed your bankruptcy, if you enter into a lease agreement after the bankruptcy case has been filed, it's legally you're not able to include that lease agreement in your Chapter 7 case. Chapter 7 deals with your obligations and contracts you entered into before your case was filed, not after. And so if you've entered into it, I've had this happen where I'll reach out to the landlord, write him a letter, say, look, not only are you not included, we can't include you, even if we wanted to. And so generally it's not an issue. So overall, I can tell you that I haven't seen it be an issue. Like I said, in 20 years of doing this, I have not seen it be an issue with creditors or with landlords as far as if you're filing for bankruptcy. Could it be, an individual landlord out there that's going to have a problem with it? Yes. And so you may have to put a little more effort into looking for it, at least early on. I can tell you in the United States, almost 1 million families a year file for bankruptcy. It's not putting those families into a homeless situation, and far from it. It's not what you can explain, and sometimes with the help of the attorney. Like I was saying, we do letters often that explain, look, they're getting rid of all this other debt, they're going to be able to easily afford this lease payment, and we're not going to be able to include it, or we won't be including it in your overall bankruptcy. So hopefully all of this has been helpful. Hopefully going through all these 7 videos, like I said, I know bankruptcy is a gigantic decision. It's something that we have a lot of fear and a lot of misunderstanding about, and I think that's where most of the fear comes from, is not understanding what the process is. But go back and watch all 7 of these videos if you're considering a Chapter 7. If you're in the state of Arizona, again, my number's below. I do a free consultation. I can provide you some specific legal advice as to what the process is involved and really how it's going to impact your specific situation. If you're not in Arizona, there's a number below where I can help refer you to an attorney who does what I do here in Arizona to help you to really get a handle and an idea of what it is, the relief that it can provide, and maybe some of the things that we need to be really careful for. So hopefully that's helpful. Appreciate you all checking in, and we will catch you next time.